gives everybody a chance to, oh, it's online now.
I renamed it to A Conversation with You. Are we good?
You're good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sherry DeBali. I'm with Redoubt News, and we're going to have a conversation today with Lieutenant Governor candidate Janice McGeachin. Did I pronounce that right?
You got it, yeah.
Actually, I have to tell you, I have a very good friend who told me that I would score points with you if I learned how to say your name correctly.
Well, I can always tell when the salesman's calling and they always mispronounce our name, but even my own husband mispronounced our name when we got married. Remember that, Mom?
Really?
He said, Jim McGeachin, and half the church started laughing because they understood, but the other half was like, what's going on out there? I had to correct him.
Now, I understand that you were in politics before.
Yep.
Would you like to tell everybody about that?
Sure. I served as a state representative, represented Bonneville County for 10 years from 2002 till 2012. And the reason I got involved in that position was because I was concerned about how I had been seeing the budget, the state budget growing at 13–14%, which is too much growth in state government. So I had run for public office before to serve as a county commissioner. That was my first run. And I worked really hard and I came really close, but came about 200 votes short in that race, but I kept my options open, and when there was redistricting and no seat in that district, no incumbent in that district, I decided to put my name in the hat because of what I'd been seeing, the growth of government too high, and won that election handily and won 4 more consecutive terms with no opponent in the Republican primary.
No opponent. So you've never been through an election with an opponent?
Well, I had a Democratic opponent a couple times while I was running for state representative, but
nothing in the primary.
Nothing like this, no. And my first try to run for office statewide, which has been a lot of fun. It's a lot of traveling. I'm living in my car pretty much the last 8 months.
Well, I've been there and done that, but not for elections.
But it's really, it has been a lot of work, but it's really been a neat experience to travel all over Idaho and see. I know that we have such a beautiful state, but being able to see the beautiful places like up here, you know, with the Pend Oreille Lake and Coeur d'Alene, the rivers, the mountains, the prairies that we have. Idaho is such a beautiful state, and what's even better than the landscape is the people of Idaho. It's been really neat to get to know a lot of really, really special people across Idaho.
Yeah, it's been an experience for me in doing some of this traveling, and I imagine you have got, you know, a whole different perspective, because you go down and you enjoy the landscape, but then they ask you about it, right? They ask you about lands, they ask you about all these other issues. What are some of the top issues that have been brought to your attention?
Well, especially in that regard, the lands issue, I started spending some time over in Salmon and Chalice, those counties, those rural counties, because right now the Salmon Chalice Forest they're two of the, well, it's a combined management forest, and they're the first forests that are going through this assessment with the federal government. The management plan is, the federal government is reassessing the plan in those forests. They're the first ones that in the state that's going through that. It was a rule that was passed under the Obama administration, 2012. And what's important about what's happening there is that there was a rule that the Obama administration inserted to take other things into consideration that are contrary to what is even in the federal law about how we should manage our forests, our resources. There's 4 different laws that say when we manage our forests and our resources on the forest, there's a lot of factors that need to be taken into consideration. The impact of the harvesting of the timber, the mining, the grazing on the lands. How do these things impact the local communities? And that's what the federal law requires, and that's not what's happening with this reassessment. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people that are really concerned. In fact, today there's another meeting happening over there. There's a group of people, about 80 to 100 people, that have become very engaged, and they were supposed to have, the Forest Service came out and they said, we're taking these comments, but they only listened to the ones they wanted to listen to. They only listened to the environmentalists and the activists, the ones that were, more of the conservation. And I support the concept of conservation. We need to protect our resources and our lands, but not to the extent where it's detrimental to the livelihood of the people that live in those communities. And so much of their local budgets are come from the revenues that are produced off those resources. So the federal government, the Forest Service, said, we've taken all this input from these hand-selected individuals and groups, and when the people in the local community started hearing about what was happening, they got real concerned, and they formed a citizen advisory group, and they protested because they gave them like a 30-day deadline to submit comments, and that's not enough to really make sure the law is being followed, and the impact of these decisions, how it's going to affect the local communities, is going to be properly considered. So, and thankfully, one of the state reps over there, Representative Dorothy Moon over there, she went and she just pressed and pressed and pressed and forced the manager of the forest over there to give Idaho more notice. 45-day extension is what they got. So that's what they're doing today, and they're meeting again to make sure that they have proper input from the local communities. Because these decisions, that if they are made and are put into place, can have a very devastating effect on the communities, the economies, the schools, how we manage our roads over in those areas. And it's just the first, as I said, it's the first forest that's going through this exercise. And we all know how much of our land in Idaho is made up of these national and state forests. So it's the first one, and the rest are going to come. We need to be a lot more aware and engaged in that process as a state, protecting our sovereignty and standing in the stead of our citizens and our communities when it comes to the federal government trying to come in and dictate how we do things on our lands.
Do you believe, let's just cut to the chase on the lands issue. Tell me how you believe the federal government, how do I want to phrase this? What does the federal government have a right to own?
Well, my belief, according to the intent of our founding fathers and the protection of our Constitution, is that the land within the boundaries of the state of Idaho, not just Idaho, but every state in the nation, the way our country was formed, the land within the borders of every state belongs to the state. And the western states are disadvantaged because the original states, that's the documents that were written, that they said once these lands are developed, that you should have equal, it's the equal footing doctrine, so that the lands, they granted that as these states, as the nation grew and these states came out west, that we should be able to have access to the resources within those boundaries of those states. But decades ago, the K Street swamp got their grubby little fingers and passed a law, grabbed our lands, and they've been to the detriment of the citizens of not just Idaho, but to all of the western states, so that we don't have the ability to properly manage our resources the way that we should be able to.
Well, there's certainly plenty of resources within our state to fund everything in our state.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a way that we can have effective management of our resources and be able to responsibly harvest the timber and be able to mine the minerals. In central part of Idaho, there's several elements over there, rare earth elements that can't be found anywhere else other than places like China and Russia. We have this here in Idaho, and we have the technology to be able to harvest the timber, mine the resources, and have the families who for decades their livelihood is dependent on being able to graze the lands for their cattle. Those revenues have just been shriveling up, and that's why our rural communities and our schools are really hurting. And so we have the ability to properly fund our localities and our schools and provide livelihood for the families. We just need to be able to responsibly manage those resources.
So as Lieutenant Governor, what do you think you can do towards those goals?
Well, we need to work closer hand in hand with other Western states and form coalitions and work with the Trump administration, which has shown, we've seen recently how he's been more conducive to allowing the state of Utah he's undone a lot of the, was it wilderness, that designation that Obama put into place in Utah?
Monuments.
The monuments, the national monuments, which has been abused under the Obama administration. So under the Trump administration, they went in and freed that up. So we have a great opportunity now to work with our new administration that's more favorable to helping make America great again and returning prosperity to the states.
Let's hit a couple other constitutional issues, or at least how I see them as constitutional issues. Let's start with pro-life. To me, that's a constitutional issue, you know. But how do you see it?
Well, I believe that life begins at the moment of conception, and I believe that abortion is murder. It's wrong. It's contrary to God's perfect will for our lives. And so when I served in the House for 10 years, not only did I vote for every single pro-life bill that came before me, I actually sponsored numerous bills aimed at helping to prevent the incidence of abortion. And most of our efforts were focused on education so that we would be able to if we could give women good information, help them understand any of the procedures that are performed, understand the procedure, understand the physical and the emotional consequence of the procedure, and know what some of the alternatives are, that she will make the right choice to save the baby and not have the abortion. And then the other effort that I worked hard on was improving the ability for a woman to have an ultrasound if she was considering having an abortion, because
The ability or the requirement?
well, constitutionally, we can't require people to do anything. We can't require them to read a book, or even the pamphlets that we produced. We could what we did is we said, you take these pamphlets, and there's a form that you sign that said you received the pamphlet. She takes them home. There's nothing we can do to require that she reads the information. Same thing with the ultrasound regulation, is that just let her know that it's available. And those are the kinds of things that have been proven to reduce the incidence of abortion, because when you see that live baby in your womb, then it makes it really difficult to make that decision.
That's the key, in my opinion, as well, that once I realize there's an actual life in there.
Yeah. But and it's thank God we do have President Trump, because he is the most pro-life president. He wrote, every 4 years when we have a new administration, the agencies have to do kind of a review and restate what their goals and priorities. And in the Health and Human Services Division, which encompasses Center for Medicare Services, it covers the FDA, HHS, all of the programs that, you know, related to health. He wrote he had them, the agency wrote within their priority, their strategic goals, the statement that life begins at the moment of conception, and every policy interpreted from the top all the way down shall be interpreted that way.
That's awesome. I hadn't heard that part.
That's huge.
That's huge, yes.
It's huge. And so we have the most pro-life president that we've had in a long time, and the way that the policies from the federal government on down to the state will be interpreted to support life as it is formed at the moment of conception. And when I served in the House, that was always a tricky issue. We had to be so careful how we defined the life. We couldn't say that it was an unborn child or a baby. It had to be, we had to use terminology that said fetus, and we couldn't say unborn child or baby. But now
I think they would have snagged me a few times because I would have done it anyway.
Yeah. Well,
no, that's why I'm not an elected official.
we would write it that way, and then the Attorney General would come and say, you have to change this because it'll be considered unconstitutional. But we have a new opportunity now with the Trump administration. We have a new Supreme Court judge, and it's likely that we may have 2 or 3 more. So this is a great opportunity. 2018 is a great year to start. For those of us who do believe in the sanctity of life and that it begins the moment of conception, we can start pushing back against that we've been so constrained.
If we can overturn Roe v. Wade.
Absolutely, yes, yep. It makes no sense that we have these laws that, for the sake of humanity, we can't be cruel to animals, but yet here we are.
Yeah.
Idaho, there are 14 babies that are aborted every year. 1,400. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say that number.
I left out a couple zeros. 1,400. Yep.
Relax, I'm not that mad, am I? I think I'm making you nervous, folks. What do you think? You getting any questions in the? Oh, thank you. We do have a question so far. How is President Trump doing, in your opinion?
I think President Trump is doing a great job. He's tried everything that he promised that he would do in the campaign. He promised that we would reduce taxes. He promised we would repeal Obamacare. He promised we'd build the wall. He promised we would bring coal and steel back to America. He's trying everything that he promised he would do to help support the American people. Unfortunately, it's Congress that has been the impediment, and even some Republicans that have stood in his way of getting some of those things accomplished. But one of the great accomplishments, I feel, is that we were able to lower the U.S. corporate income tax rate, which was the highest in the developed world, so that our companies in America can now be more competitive on a world stage.
Yeah, several of them have come back.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see that. The next question is touching on what I was going to ask you next, and it's about immigration. I want you to talk to me about legal versus illegal immigration and refugees. Because that's actually a different definition.
So important.
Yeah.
Well, we have laws on the books, and it's important that we follow the laws and enforce the laws, because if we don't, then there's no integrity in the laws. And that's the problem with the issue of immigration right now, is that there's a policy in place that determines how many people may come into our country legally, and that's not being followed. So we have all these people that are flowing into our country, and and let me just say, you know, right off the bat, all of us, if we track our roots all the way back, we were all immigrants. Our founding fathers that immigrated to America from Great Britain. We're all can trace our roots back to immigration, but we did it the legal way. And it was a planned immigration. And that's what I support. I support legal immigration. When people don't follow the law and they come in illegally, it undermines so much in our society. It depresses wages. We should be looking at which sectors of our economy do we need a greater labor force, and then that's how we manage our immigration policies. Where we need more workers, those are the ones we bring in, and we do it legally and we do it the right way, and we have people that come into our country that have something to offer. But in sectors of our economy where we don't need the workers, then those aren't the people we bring in.
Right.
So we have to enforce the laws, and when it comes to illegal immigration, we need to support our president.
What do you think about this caravan coming up through Mexico? Have you heard about it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, there's a caravan of in excess of 1,200 people that has left Honduras and is traveling through Mexico, aided by Mexico, to hit our southern border and overwhelm the guards at the border, is their intent, so that they can come freely into this country. And
That's why we need a wall.
yes, it is
why
why
wall.
well, it is my understanding that President Trump has ordered the military to go guard the border.
That's what needs to happen. Thank you, President Trump, for doing that. My family moved to Idaho from Arizona. We lived in southern Arizona, Tucson, which was very close to the border down there. And there's parts of that state that are just being overrun by crime and really hurting the citizens. In fact, my cousin is a woman of great integrity that she's a foster mother to a lot of the kids that are in the situation, you know, they're probably what you would call those the children of the illegal immigrants that come into our country. And she's helping to take care of them because their parents get involved in drugs and crime, and then the kids become a burden onto the state, and they're overwhelming our resources.
It is my understanding that when Obama left office, we had topped 50% of this country being on welfare, or something close to those figures. I am pulling this off the top of my head because it's been a while. And a lot of it is the immigrants, and a lot of it is just people who don't like to work.
Right. Well, there's two trains of thought for people, how they think about the proper role of government. The left believes that the government should be bigger and should provide all these services and should dictate every aspect of our life, where we go to school, which doctor we go to, even when our businesses should close at the end of the day. And then there's the other thought process that believes that the government should have a very limited role, and I like the phrase that says that government is best which governs the least, because that's where we have the greatest individual liberties and freedoms and the ability to provide for ourselves, our families, and have true prosperity, economic prosperity.
Talk to me about refugees, and I'm going to ask you to be specific about Twin Falls and the situations in southern Idaho.
So the refugee situation is really difficult at this time because the countries that our president has named that may not come into our country as refugees are ones from governments that don't have the ability to properly vet those coming into our country. And so if we can't properly vet the refugees, they shouldn't be coming into our country. And that's a real concern. I see it.
I'm not sure we can vet any country's refugees at this point, can we?
Possibly not, but for sure not the number, those specific countries that President Trump has named, because they have no government. Syria, countries in Africa where there's no government, and we don't know who these people are. They shouldn't be coming into our country. They are coming into our country. They're coming into our state, even though Otter, as a state, declared that we were not going to participate in that refugee program anymore. They're still coming in, and they're coming in through these voluntary agencies in Boise and in Twin Falls.
Right.
And what needs to happen there, what happens is the federal government can contract with these agencies, and they pay them so much per person to bring these people in.
There's the issue of money.
It's all money. Just follow the money. It always is about the money. The unfortunate thing, though, the federal government doesn't require these voluntary agencies to keep track of these people beyond 120 days. So they bring them in, they receive money from us, the taxpayers. Then after 120 days, they're just let. Nobody keeps track of them in the community anymore. But there is a federal law, again, a federal law that says that which we should be abiding by. We should honor the integrity of the law, that says that if these people are placing a burden on the school system, the welfare programs, the law enforcement, if there's no affordable housing for these people, then the state should stand up and demand that these people are no longer allowed to come in and remove. That is what hasn't happened, but that's where we have the opportunity as a state with new leadership to be more proactive and protect our state and our citizens from what's happening in these communities, Boise and Twin Falls especially.
Yeah, I don't think we've had very good leadership on that, and
Yes, there's been no leadership, none. No leadership on the refugee issue, no leadership on the management of these forests, these assessments.
Are these the reasons you decided to get back into the politics?
Yes, because I served 10 years. I don't believe in career politicians. The people of Idaho voted for term limits. I intended to only serve 8 years, but House leadership wanted to put me in charge of the Committee on Health because that's when Obamacare abominations started coming down. But after the 10 years, I term limited myself, went back to the private sector, started up a new company, created more jobs in my community. But what I've seen in the past 6 years since I stepped back, I've seen an exorbitant growth of state government, 5 times the number of full-time employees in state government in the last 6 years than we saw in the 6 years prior to that. And not only that, the growth of state employees, but the growth of the federal influence in our state. And with the implementation of Obamacare in Idaho, the implementation of Common Core, the way that we fund our roads, the way that we take money in grants in our Department of Labor, all across the board, the decisions that are being made down in Boise, by taking those federal dollars, they are encumbering Idaho more and more to be a slave to the federal government. So 35% of our budget now is made up of federal debt financing that our kids are going to
Do
have to
you
pay
have
back.
a plan to get us out of that?
The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to stop any more expansion of the federal programs. We're not going to take any more federal grants. There was a bill before the legislature to do that, and thankfully the legislature, in their wisdom, decided not to expand the Medicaid program. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is no more expansion of the federal programs. Then what we're going to do is we're going to work on building up the economy of our state through tax policy. We're going to lower taxes on our companies, big and small. We're going to get rid of special interest tax incentives that favor the political class and not the middle class. We're going to do a better job of teaching our kids how to have hands-on skills to go into a trade, because there's a lot of good jobs that are out there that pay good money, but we're not properly equipping our kids for those jobs. We're going to bring back industry, bring back manufacturing into our state so that we can start weaning ourselves away from that federal dependency and go from 49th lowest in the country in the measure of per capita personal income, which is a measure of wealth and productivity. We're going to increase that, and as we do that, we're going to become a more prosperous, wealthy state. Revenues are going to go up, and then we can start weaning ourselves and giving the government, the federal government, the boot. We're going to get them off our back.
What about Common Core?
It's terrible. Yeah, that's so bad. And the thing about Common Core is we should be aspiring to so much greater than everybody meeting a minimum standard. And that's basically what it is. It's a minimum standard that everyone should meet. If you pass a certain test, then you will meet the standard and move on. We should be aspiring to so much greater things than that, and we can. The kids in school, not all of them learn the same way. There are some kids that learn out of the left side of their brain, and then some kids learn out of the right side of their brain. And they need to have opportunities and the creativity to learn the way that suits them best, and give our parents greater choice in education, and trust our teachers and our local school districts to work with what's best for their communities and their kids.
Okay, we have another question. How do you feel about the militia?
Well, the militia is written into our Constitution that we should have a well-regulated militia in our state and in our country.
So you support the militia?
Absolutely.
Are you a part of the militia?
No, I'm not.
Would you like to be?
Sure.
I think we can introduce you to Captain Alexander, and he will definitely talk to you about. He was supposed to be here today, folks, and I do apologize for that. We got our old timer calendars mixed up. So
I think it's a new time that I'm seeing, a new morning in the conscience of the citizen, where maybe we've been awake, or excuse me, maybe we've been asleep for too long, and we've taken a lot of things for granted. But as we see things happening around us, where the government is becoming more aggressive and seizing our property, our rights, it's really alarming, it's concerning. And then we also see the level of violence that's being inflicted on the law-abiding citizens by the lawbreakers. I think we're having an awakening that is really important, that we as citizens know how to defend ourselves and properly equip ourselves to be able to defend our homes, our property, our families, our lives, our businesses. And so along that line, I've recently taken some gun safety classes, and in our restaurant we put those employees that wanted the training, because they have concern about active shooting situation in the public restaurant. So we put them through a safety class, and we had a 4-hour class, learned all the laws, and went out and had experience shooting different kinds of guns, and we all became certified with our enhanced carry permit. And I'm going to continue my education, because it makes me feel confident to be able to know how to properly.
So you own weapons yourself?
Yes. My husband went out and bought an AR-15.
Would you like to tell that story? You were telling me that story downstairs.
Yeah.
Before you move off of the militia question,
Yes.
since it's pertinent, did you know that the militia is supposed to take orders from the governor in times of crisis? And would you be willing to call on the militia during a crisis?
That's what is provided, correct? Yes, then absolutely, yes.
The question was, if you all didn't hear it, whether or not she understood that the militia pretty much answers to the governor, and would she be willing to call on the militia in a crisis? Did I get that correct?
Yes.
That is when I'm serving in the capacity of the governor, when the governor's out of the state.
Well, you as lieutenant governor, you have to be prepared for that.
Absolutely, yes, and I would totally support whoever our next president or governor is. I'll be very supportive of that, because I think that's what we need to do more. Is we need to just quit allowing ourselves to be pushed around by individuals and by the federal government. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. That's our new mantra. Now tell us about the AR-15.
So my husband went out and bought the AR-15. This was last fall, because that's after one of the horrible incidents, and there was a lot of discussion about banning the AR-15. So he went out and bought one, and for fear that they might be banned. So we have one. I had never used it before, but 2 or 3 weeks ago went out to do some target shooting in the fields, and I picked it up to find out, what's this all about? And I picked it up and I shot some rounds, and it was a little heavy for my arms because I don't use the weapon that way. So I didn't have the greatest shot practice that time, but then we propped it up on the back of the pickup, and I was looking through the sight, and I hit the target, the metal target that was probably 200 or 300 feet out there. Out of the 15 rounds, I shot it 12 out of 15 times. And it was really cool to hear that bing, 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 bing. I thought, this is really fun. I can see why people enjoy that weapon. But it is a powerful weapon. It actually is, it's easy to use, easier to hit your target with that than some others. But again, it's all about being trained to use it safely and properly.
Exactly. Representative Nate did get a bill through this year that did not require, but allows the option for schools to offer gun safety courses. Mm-hmm. I would like to see something like that throughout the state, not necessarily just an option. I personally would like to see it mandatory.
Good idea. Well, the teachers, I think, I've had some teachers that are nervous about that, and they say, well, you want all of the teachers to be armed? No, that's not what we're saying. We're not mandating that they be armed, but if we could provide the safety training to each of them, I think that's a great service to provide to the teachers. And
I recently read an article where Kansas, the legislature in Kansas, tried to put a bill through that would hold schools accountable for any shootings if they were found to have not allowed the teachers to be armed. Mm-hmm. Actually banned them from being armed, not just give them the option and they chose not to, but actually said they are not allowed to.
Well, again, that's one of the problems where it comes back to the undue influence of our federal government in so many aspects of our life. And in the classroom, those gun-free zones, the only reason why they are there is because the school district has accepted a federal grant to put that gun-free zone into place. So all you have to do is just say, I'm not going to take the money, and the school districts can do as they please. In fact, there's a school district in, I think it's Garden Valley, that they don't have a gun-free zone, and they do that. They equip their teachers and their administrators.
I understand a lot of people have a problem with weapons, so I have a problem with anybody saying you're mandated and required. But at the same time, I have a problem with them saying you're mandated to not allow anybody to do it. So, the extremes I have a problem with. I like a little bit of compromise on that issues. The teachers that are trained and want to.
Right. Yeah, we shouldn't, the mandate that says nobody can is wrong, because that's an infringement on our freedom and our liberty.
And our right to protect our children. I'm guessing that that Captain Alexander is in our chat room?
Yes.
Okay, John's in our chat room and he
Hi,
has
John. I'm sorry you can't be here today. I was looking forward to meeting you.
He would like to know, back on the militia topic, would you recommend to the governor and actually ask the governor to call in the militia during a crisis?
Yes, I would. Absolutely.
Okay, he heard you. For example, I feel the militia should be called in on these illegal land grabs to protect the ranchers, etc.
Yes, and well, the highest level of authority for law enforcement, according to our Constitution, is the sheriff. And so what we can do is working with the Trump administration, those U.S. Forest Service members who are carrying a gun on our lands and arresting people for harvesting firewood to keep their families warm,
Right.
and
Or fishing.
or having logs fall off the truck. It's such nonsense. If we could work, and they're paid a decent amount of money, I think, maybe $80,000 a year. If we could work with the Trump administration and do some block granting for that same amount of money that's being spent, and those U.S. Forest officials being able to carry a gun and work against us as citizens, we could go hire 2 sheriff deputies to manage our lands. And nobody knows better to protect the citizen and manage the lands than our local communities.
Well, it's my understanding that every department within the federal government has their own law enforcement division. And within that, they all have their own SWAT divisions. And it is mostly job security that they keep them around more than anything else. It's not like they, personally, I think we've got, did we?
Keep going.
Personally, I think a lot of these departments need to go away. They just need to evaporate themselves.
Exactly, because the bottom line, whoever pays these positions is being paid by the taxpayer, and the closer we can get those jobs to the local community, the more efficient and effective it's going to be. So if it's a local sheriff, we can do twice as much with that money than what can be done on a federal level.
Oh yeah, we are very blessed up here in Bonner County. We have a very good constitutional sheriff, Darrell Wheeler, and I've sat down and I've talked to him, and I've learned that he is a constitutional sheriff. I didn't take anybody's word for it, so that tells you go to your sheriff and sit down with him, have a cup of coffee with him, and ask him how he feels about different issues, and you'll learn yourself whether or not he's constitutional. But that is vital to your community. But there are areas that do not have the constitutional sheriff, and you brought up some very good examples of people that were being harassed. A log falls off your truck and somebody's going to get stopped and arrested on this. Small issues that are blown out of proportion. As Lieutenant Governor, what can you do to help some of these people?
Well, I just think, if we could have more flexibility to work with the administration to bring even some of those positions more local, and work with the counties, more hand in hand with the counties. I think we have just a world of opportunity from the executive position in the state of Idaho. Idaho is a sovereign state, equal in footing to the federal position. The President of the United States is equal to the governor of the state. It's not greater than the state, it's equal. They're both sovereign entities. So if we can just work with the current administration to bring more of those things to the local level, we'll be so much more effective and responsive to the needs of the people.
Sounds like you're all for the bottom-up government.
Absolutely. That government, which is the least, governs the best.
Yeah, that's my idea too,
Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem.
Thank you. Very good. Are there any more questions over there, Brett?
Well, he's asking to clarify, I'm not saying fight the government, I'm saying to keep the peace, make sure no one is harmed. Without militia presence, anything can happen to the citizens.
All right, what's
And I
the
don't really
question?
see a question.
And I'm not sure.
I think he was just clarifying his statement prior.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully answered John's question, so I'd like to go back to that a little bit. 'Cause his question was
Absolutely.
being willing to, help the governor call out the militia to protect citizens from these federal land grabs. Yes, absolutely. And I kind of went into this discussion about the local sheriffs. I think both we can utilize, work with our sheriffs first and foremost to prevent those things from happening in the first place. And then if they continue to grow out of control, then we call in the militia.
Does that answer his question? John, go ahead and let us know. Is there anything further on that question? All good?
So far,
Well, it's all about protecting the citizens that live in the state,
Yes.
and having always having their best interest in mind, and what we need to do to protect the lives, the property, and the liberties of the citizens of Idaho.
What are some of the other events you'll be going to if people would like to come up and meet you?
Well, let's see. There is a luncheon that back in Coeur d'Alene tomorrow. I think it's the Kootenai Republicans.
Okay.
And then there's
They're a good group down there. Big
Yeah.
group too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just try to slip in and meet some people there. And then there's another lunch in Post Falls Friday with a different Republican group, because there's a few different Republican groups in Kootenai County. And then Friday night, my mom and I are coming back up to this area, Priest River, for the Bonner Lincoln Banquet, and it'd be great to meet with some people Friday night there. And then Saturday night is the Lincoln Banquet up in Bonner's Ferry. So I've really loved traveling around the state and meeting with people. We had a great event last night in Potlatch. Sorry.
And you and I first met in Chalice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun actually. It
Did
was
you
a
enjoy
very
that?
small Lincoln Day, but it was a lot more fun than I expected a small one to be.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that one a lot.
Well, it's been so great this year. 2018's a great year. It's a great opportunity for change. And everywhere I go, I'm seeing a lot of interest and a lot of engagement. Every single one of these banquets, even in the very small community of Chalice, there were 100, weren't there 100 or more people there?
That room was full. I was
Yeah.
really impressed.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. What I'm seeing is the engagement of the people that really care about what's going on. So it's time to take back our destiny and reclaim our heritage in Idaho. That's what 2018, a great opportunity to have new leadership and begin to turn the tide back from what has always made Idaho such a great state, and that is our independence and our ability to provide for ourselves, our self-reliance. And we don't need that federal government to tell us what to do or how to live our lives. We can take care of ourselves.
How do you understand the lieutenant governor's position?
According to our Constitution, it's a very limited role. The lieutenant governor presides over the Senate while they're in session as the president of the body. And then if the governor is ever out of state, then the lieutenant governor serves as the governor while they're out of the boundary of the state. So according to our Constitution, it's a very limited role. But I view it as an opportunity to be able to just serve in whichever capacity is good for the people of Idaho, and I would like to support opportunities for the citizens to become more self-reliant, have more prosperity. I really believe strongly in the idea of these apprenticeship skills training programs that I'd like to, and program is a bad word, it's a partnership between the business community and the educational
I
institution.
like that, that's good, keep going.
We don't need more programs, we just need to have a better working relationship between the business community and our schools, because the business community is screaming for skilled workers. In our business, we're in automotive, and we have a repair shop in Idaho Falls, and the only thing that keeps us from growing, we bought a new building last year with almost twice as many bays that we had before, and we have empty bays because we can't find the skilled workers, the skilled mechanics to come work for us. Our sales revenue could be doubled what it is in our old location if we had more workers. So the business community is screaming for skilled workers and good employees. So, and we are willing to invest in the training and the equipment to provide that training to those kids in high school, starting in high school, and give them skills so that it just feeds right into the companies. There's a great school up here in North Idaho, Rathdrum. It's called the Kootenai Technical Education Center, and it was started by 12 industry leaders because same reason, they were screaming for skilled workers for their companies, and they work with the local school districts, and they have 12 programs. They start as a junior in high school, and when they end up after their senior year, they're all certified with a 2-year degree. And these young people are coming out of high school in welding, resort hospitality, CNA, construction. I went in, it's so cool. They have this big warehouse, and the first year the students go in and they construct a whole house within the warehouse, from the ground all the way up. And so they assemble it and they disassemble it, and then their second year they go out and help build homes for Habitat for Humanity. It's so cool what is happening in Idaho and what we can build on those successful programs to support our businesses and give our kids a hope for a future. It's these young people, I met with several of them, and they're so proud, and they go back to their school in the afternoon, and they wear their school t-shirt with the logo on, and it's actually a prestigious, their peers view them as being the ones that have the prestige. So
I like that. I
really
think we
cool.
might have to look into that group.
It's K-Tech is the name of the
Last question from John, and it's more of an invitation. He wants to know if you can make it to his public meeting tonight at 6 in Wawas.
The militia's having a meeting.
Oh, darn it.
And Michael Snyder is also going to be there.
Oh, darn. I'm sorry I won't be there tonight, because I do have a gathering of some supporters back in Coeur d'Alene tonight, where some of the people that have helped me in my campaign up in this part of the state, we're all going to get together for dinner.
I'll get her card. I will get her email, and I will send it to you, John, and you just get her on your mailing list for events. And
Will
see what you can
you
do.
invite me to the next event that you have?
There you go.
He will.
I'd love that. That'd be awesome.
And he did say to make sure you had his phone number.
Okay.
I will arrange that. Absolutely. Before I ask you to finish up, I want to show everybody what you gave me. She brought me a gift. This is, just awesome. And it's not exactly the right thing to wear on a t-shirt, but I want y'all to see this. She designed this pen, and I love it. And this is my new bling. So y'all just, if you want new bling like this, you need to talk to this lady here. She's got a real talent for designing.
If you go onto my website, Janice for Idaho, send me a message, and I've got some extra Trump bling I'd be happy to send you. I didn't have the opportunity to mention that I was a solid supporter of Trump from the very beginning during the primary in 2016. Came out in support. I was the first vice chair of the Trump Idaho team, and I was a Trump delegate. So it was a real neat opportunity to go to the Republican National Convention in Cleveland and cast one of those votes for our president. But I had these designed because I just wanted, in my small way, I wanted to say, well, what can I do to help support our president and, you know, have promotion. So I worked with
It's
a
real pretty.
it
so
was a woman-owned business in Illinois who was a fellow Trumpster, and we
really.
absolutely, Audrey is the name of her business, and we designed those, and so yeah, it's been fun to.
Well, you have quite a talent for
Yes,
designing these. That's real pretty.
Well, I hope you enjoy your Trumpling.
Oh,
Wear it
I
with
will.
pride.
I will be wearing
Wear
that
it with
around.
pride.
Yeah,
I got mine on my knee here. I've been.
She has a brace on her knee, and she's going to tell us that story here too. She didn't know, but she's going.
Yeah, because I've been kicking in the butt all around the state on the campaign trail.
There you go. I like that story better.
No, seriously though, this campaign has been a great experience. It is a competitive race, but it's winnable. Every vote will count in this race. And just to share with the viewers and listeners about what we've been doing to spread the message, most of our efforts have been focused on like what you're doing, you know, the social internet marketing. It's a targeted digital marketing. And through that, we have reached out to, we've had over 1.2 million impressions on our marketing in my campaign.
Oh, very good.
It's the most effective and efficient way of marketing for anything, whether it's a product you're selling or a campaign. So we've been out there working hard. We're reaching out to a lot of people. We're doing it in an efficient way, and that's how we're going to help manage your tax dollars
There you
when I
go.
become your next lieutenant governor. So I'd love to have the opportunity to ask your viewers and your listeners to.
You've got the floor. I was going to ask you if you would like to spend a few minutes and tell everybody anything else that you've forgotten, and ask them.
Yes, for their support. So yeah, again, my name is Janice McGeachin, one of the candidates for lieutenant governor. I am from Idaho Falls, where I've lived 40 years of my life, married to my high school sweetheart, Jimmy, for more than 30 years. We have 2 adult children, Liza and James. We are small business owners. We do what so many of the politicians say they are going to do, and we actually create jobs. So we have business experience in 4 industries: the wholesale, manufacturing, retail, and machinery. So we have a lot of experience in business. That's who we are. That's what we do. We provide opportunities for individuals. We help create a culture of individual responsibility and accountability, providing opportunities for them to be successel in their lives and have advancement and support our employees. That's who we are. That's what we do. I want to be able to help other people all across the state to have what we do, and that is have the ability for our kids to stay in the community, stay in Idaho, have good opportunities, so that our families can just all be together. We can help support each other and build each other up. So that's who I am. I would love to have your support on May 15th, and I humbly and respectfully ask for your vote May 15th to become your next lieutenant governor. This is the opportunity now that you can apply for an absentee ballot.
Yeah, I think we're coming up on the deadline on that one.
Yeah.
Soon.
Mm-hmm. So there's a great opportunity. Grab your ballot, cast your vote for Janice McGeachin, and I'd love to have the opportunity to serve the people of Idaho in a new and different capacity.
I'm excited about this election. I'm going to be on pins and needles and probably down at the clerk's office watching the results as they come in.
Oh, every vote is going to count.
Yes.
And it might come down to 1 or 2 votes in different precincts, so it's really important.
I'll be honest with you, I watched the vote count in our clerk's office most elections. And there was one election that Brett and I went down to, and I believe it was one particular county. They were asking for a big levy, and I don't remember which taxing district it was, but they were asking for a big levy, and only one person showed up to vote in that county.
Wow.
One person decided
Wow.
whether or not they would get that levy.
Well, see, that's a perfect example of every vote matters, every vote
That's right.
counts. And don't stay home this election. There's so much writing on this election here in Idaho. Don't stay home. It's the government is intended to only be there to protect our freedoms and our unalienable rights that were granted to us by our founding fathers. That's the only purpose of the government. And it's been growing too much out of control. It's robbing us of our freedom, our opportunities, our prosperity. Let's reclaim our government to work for we, the people, instead of the special interests and the status quo that we've seen in Idaho grow in the last few years.
I encourage everyone to get to know Janice McGeachin. She seems to be somebody who knows our Constitution, so I can confidently call her a constitutional candidate, and she is worth getting to know. Please go to her website, and if you have questions, she's accessible. Please ask her your questions. I'm sure she would enjoy that. Please share this video, and don't forget to vote. Don't forget to encourage your neighbors to vote. Don't forget to encourage the rest of your family to vote. It's important. Thank you. This is Sherry DeValle with Redoubt News, and we will see you later.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was fun.
It was fun. It was. I enjoyed